Welcome to the Sleepy Universe channel. I'm so glad you found your way here. Maybe you had a long day full of noise and rushing, or maybe you're simply ready to let go of the world for a while. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. You've got nothing to do but rest. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body grow light, as if the heavy gravity of Earth has finally let you go. Because tonight, we aren't simply looking up at the sky. We are drifting outward, leaving our blue home behind to walk the silent, rusty sands of our neighbor, Mars. It is a world of deep quiet, ancient winds, and a stillness that has lasted for billions of years. We will immerse ourselves in a journey that is not measured in hours, but in geological eras. We will drift over continents of rust, stand beneath blue sunsets, and listen to the hollow whisper of the thinnest air. This is a story of a planet that fell asleep long before life on Earth crawled from the ocean. So settle in. Let the darkness of your room become the comforting void of space. We are arriving at the red planet now, approaching the rusty sphere. As we drift closer to our destination, the first thing you see is not a surface, but a color. Hanging in the absolute black void is a sphere of warm, burnished ochre. It glows softly, reflecting the distant sun. It does not shine with the brilliant blue and white intensity of Earth. Instead, it smolders like a dying ember. This is Mars. From this distance, thousands of miles up, you can see the grand scars of its past. The darkness of the Syrtis Major Plateau, the bright dust of the Tharsis volcanoes, and the brilliant white caps of ice at the poles. It looks peaceful. It looks finished. Unlike Earth, which is a swirl of changing clouds and shifting oceans, Mars seems frozen in a permanent portrait of stillness. It is a world that has stopped hurrying. The silence is a physical weight. If you were to descend through the thin wisps of atmosphere and stand on the surface, the first sensation to wash over you would be the silence. It is not merely the absence of noise. It is a heavy geologic presence. On Earth, silence is rare. Even in the deepest desert, there is the sound of your own blood, the rustle of air, the distant hum of life. But here, the atmosphere is incredibly thin, less than 1% of Earth's density. Sound waves struggle to move through this rarefied air. They die out quickly, fading into nothingness within a few meters. If a rock were to fall from a cliff a mile away, you would hear nothing. The landscape absorbs sound. It is a muffled world, wrapped in a blanket of dampening air. This silence has reigned here for eons. It creates a sense of profound isolation, but not loneliness. It is the feeling of being in a vast, empty library at night, where the quiet itself feels protective. The air is thin and ancient. The air you would try to breathe here is very different from home. It is composed almost entirely of carbon dioxide, 95%. It is the same gas that you exhale, the gas that plants on Earth breathe in. But here, there are no plants to drink it. It sits heavily in the basins and craters. Along with carbon dioxide, there are traces of nitrogen and argon. Argon is a noble gas, heavy and lazy. It does not react with anything. It does not burn. It does not bond. It simply exists. As the lighter gases of Mars's ancient atmosphere escaped into space billions of years ago, the heavy argon remained, sinking into the valleys. It is a ghost gas, a chemical residue of a time when Mars was warmer and thicker. Every breath of wind here carries these ancient, inert atoms that have witnessed the birth and death of the planet's rivers. The sky is butterscotch by day. If you look up during the day, you will not see the deep azure blue of Earth. The sky of Mars is a soft, creamy color, often described as butterscotch or caramel. This is because the air is filled with microscopic particles of dust. This dust is everywhere. It hangs suspended in the atmosphere, never fully settling. When sunlight strikes these tiny grains, it scatters in a way that paints the dome of the sky in shades of pink, tan, and pale orange. It is a warm sky for such a cold world. It feels like a perpetual late afternoon, a time of day that suggests the work is done, and it is time to rest. Only high up, at the very zenith, does the sky fade into a dark, bruised purple, hinting at the vacuum of space just a few miles above. The dust is as fine as smoke. Let's look at the ground beneath your feet. It is covered in regolith, a layer of broken rock and dust. But this is not like the sand of a beach. The dust of Mars is incredibly fine, almost like talcum powder or smoke. It is so fine that it gets into everything. It clings to spacesuits, coats solar panels, and drifts into the smallest cracks. This dust is rich in iron oxide, rust. In a very literal sense, the planet has slowly rusted over billions of years of exposure to the faint oxygen in the early atmosphere. It is a world of oxidized memory. If you were to pick up a handful of this soil, it would feel soft and silky, slipping through your fingers like flour, leaving a red stain on your gloves. This dust is the skin of the planet, shifting endlessly, driven by the wind, burying the past and then revealing it again in a slow, unending cycle. Gravity is a gentle hand. Mars is a smaller world than ours, with only about half the diameter of Earth. Because it has less mass, it has less gravity. About 38% of what you are used to. If you were walking across these ancient dunes, you would feel an immediate, profound relief. The heavy burden of your own weight would be lifted. Your muscles, tuned to the pull of Earth, would feel powerful here. Every step would turn into a long, slow glide. You would feel bouncy, light, almost ethereal. It is a sensation of unburdening. Imagine lying down on the soft red sand. You would not feel pressed hard against the ground. Instead, you would feel as if the planet were holding you loosely, cupping you gently in its palm. It is a world that asks less of you, a place where the physical struggle of existence is dialed down, allowing you to float through the landscape. Phobos, the doomed companion. As your eyes adjust to the butterscotch sky, you might notice something moving. Mars has 2 moons, but they are not the round, pearly sphere we know. The first and larger one is Phobos. It is a lumpy, cratered rock, shaped like a potato, scarred by a massive impact crater named Stickney. Phobos is a moon in a hurry. It orbits so close to the planet, only 6,000 kilometers above the surface, that it races across the sky. It rises in the west and sets in the east twice every single day. But there is a sadness to Phobos. It is caught in a death spiral. Tidal forces are slowly pulling it inward, dragging it closer to Mars by about 2 meters every 100 years. Millions of years from now, in a quiet cosmic tragedy, Phobos will either crash into the red sands or be torn apart by gravity to form a ring of dust. But for now, it races silently overhead, a fleeting shadow casting brief eclipses on the dunes below. Deimos, the distant star. The second moon, Deimos, is much smaller and much farther away. If you didn't know where to look, you might mistake it for a bright star. It orbits 23,000 kilometers away, drifting lazily through the background constellations. While Phobos rushes by, Deimos watches from a distance. It is a smooth, dust-covered rock, lacking the deep grooves of its brother. Its orbit is nearly synchronous with Mars's rotation, meaning it hangs in the sky for days at a time, moving painfully slowly. It is the lonely sentinel of the Martian night, a silent witness that keeps its distance, watching the slow geologic slumber of the world beneath. The lack of a magnetic shield. One of the reasons Mars is so quiet and still is that its heart stopped beating. Deep inside Earth, a molten iron core spins, generating a magnetic field that protects us from solar radiation. But Mars is smaller. Its core cooled down and solidified billions of years ago. The magnetic dynamo stopped. The invisible shield collapsed. Without this protection, the solar wind, a stream of charged particles from the sun, began to strip away the atmosphere. It blew away the water vapor, the thick air, the warmth. Today, Mars is naked to the cosmos. But there are ghosts of magnetism here. In the southern hemisphere, ancient rocks still hold magnetic charges, frozen in alignment from billions of years ago. These crustal stripes are fossilized energy, a memory of the time when the planet had a beating heart. Global dust storms. Usually, the weather on Mars is calm, but every few years, in Martian time, something incredible happens. A dust storm begins in a small region, perhaps Hellas Basin. The sun heats the dust, the air rises, and the wind picks up. The storm grows. It merges with other storms. Within weeks, the entire planet can be enveloped in a global shroud of dust. From space, the surface features vanish. Olympus Mons, the Great Canyon, the polar caps, all hidden beneath a uniform, hazy veil. On the surface, the sun turns into a dim, ghostly disk. The temperature drops. The world enters a kind of twilight hibernation. These storms can last for months, and then, as mysteriously as they began, they fade. The dust settles slowly, grain by grain, coating the rocks in a fresh layer of silence. It is a planetary reset, a deep breath taken and released. The temperature swings. Mars is a world of thermal extremes, but without the moisture of Earth to moderate them. The air is too thin to hold on to heat. Near the equator, on a summer afternoon, the temperature might rise to a comfortable 20 degrees Celsius, shirt-sleeve weather. You could stand in the sun and feel warmth on your face. But the moment the sun touches the horizon, that warmth vanishes. There is no blanket of air to keep it. The temperature plummets instantly, dropping to -70 or -100 degrees Celsius by midnight. The rocks crack from the thermal stress. Frost forms on the ground. It is a world where comfort is fleeting, and the cold of space is always waiting just a few inches away. Noctilucent clouds. Though the air is dry, clouds do exist here. High in the upper atmosphere, 50 miles up, tiny crystals of water ice and dry ice form around grains of meteor dust. These are noctilucent clouds, night-shining clouds. Because they are so high, they catch the sunlight even after the sun has set on the surface. While you stand in the darkening twilight, These clouds glow with a silvery blue electric light against the black sky. They are delicate, wispy veils, rippling like water. They are the highest clouds in the solar system, silent streamers of ice watching over the sleeping planet. The absence of tectonic plates. Earth is a restless puzzle of moving plates. Continents crash together, drift apart, and recycle the crust. Mars is different. Mars is a one-plate planet. Its crust is a single solid shell, unbroken and immovable. Because the surface does not move, the features here are incredibly old. The crater you see today looks exactly as it did 3 billion years ago. The volcano that erupted in the Jurassic period is still standing in the same spot. There is no recycling, no erasing of history. Mars is a museum. Every scar, every impact, every dried riverbed is preserved in the open air, a perfect record of cosmic history waiting to be read. The curiosity of the soul. Time is measured differently here. A Martian day is called a sol. It lasts 24 hours, 39 minutes, and 35 seconds. It is tantalizingly close to an Earth day. If you lived here, you would hardly notice the difference at first. But slowly, your clock would drift. Each day, you would stay up 39 minutes later. You would sleep 39 minutes more. It is a slightly slower rhythm, a more leisurely pace. It feels as though the planet itself is telling you to slow down, to take a little more time, to not rush the turning of the world. Those extra 39 minutes are a gift of time, a quiet pocket of existence found only here. The cosmic radiation. The surface of Mars is bathed in invisible light. Cosmic rays from deep space and high-energy particles from the sun rain down constantly. It is a silent, sterile rain. It cleanses the surface. Complex molecules are broken down. The soil is bleached. This radiation is why the surface is likely lifeless. It creates a sterile stillness, a purity of chemistry. But it also means that if life exists, or if humans are to live here, we must go down into the lava tubes, under the ice, beneath the regolith. The surface is a place of harsh beauty, but the shelter lies deep within the planet's skin. The blueberries of Meridiani. Let us focus on a small detail on the ground. Scattered across the vast plains of Meridiani Planum are millions of tiny, hard spheres. They are small, grayish-blue, the size of BB pellets. When the Opportunity rover first saw them, scientists called them blueberries. But they are not organic. They are hematite concretions. They formed billions of years ago when groundwater, rich in minerals, seeped through the porous rock. The minerals precipitated out, layer by layer, forming these hard pearls. As the softer rock eroded away over eons, the blueberries were left behind. They sit loose on the surface now, rolling gently in the wind, a vast field of stone marbles left by a vanished sea. They are the tactile proof of water, little spheres of history resting in the dust. The smell of Mars. You cannot breathe the air, but if you could smell it, what would Mars smell like? Astronauts who returned from the moon said lunar dust smelled like gunpowder. Mars likely smells more complex. The dust is oxidized iron and sulfur. It might smell slightly metallic, like old pennies held in a warm hand, or perhaps sharp and acrid, like sulfur or matches, combined with the dry, dusty scent of a desert after a long drought. It is the scent of chemistry, not biology. A sterile, mineral perfume that clings to everything. The smell of a world that has been baking in the cold and the radiation for an eternity. The horizon is close. Because Mars is a smaller sphere, the ground curves away from you faster than on Earth. On our home planet, if you stand on a flat plane, the horizon is about 4.7 kilometers away. On Mars, it is only about 3.4 kilometers. This subtle difference changes how the world feels. The horizon feels closer, more intimate. You feel like you are standing on the peak of a very subtle hill. Things disappear over the curve sooner. It makes the vast planet feel surprisingly personal, as if you are the center of a small, private circle of visibility, moving with you as you walk. We leave the dusty plains now, drifting slowly upward, carried by the thin currents of the atmosphere. We are turning north. As the red horizon stretches out, the colors beneath us begin to change. The warm ochre and rust give way to smoother, paler tones. The ground becomes flatter, the craters fewer. We are approaching the top of the world, a place locked in a deep, cryogenic slumber. Here, Mars holds its deepest secrets, frozen in time. The air grows sharper, thinner, and clearer. We are entering the domain of the great northern ice, the Planemborium. At the very top of Mars lies a majestic structure known as the Planemborium, the northern polar cap. It is a vast plateau of ice, rising 3 kilometers above the surrounding plains. It spans a distance of 1,000 kilometers, a white continent sitting atop a red world. This is not just a thin layer of frost. It is a massive stack of water ice and dust, layer upon layer, like the pages of a closed book. These layers are a climate record. Just as tree rings tell the story of years on Earth, the polar layers of Mars tell the story of millions of years of planetary tilt and wobbling. Each layer is a frozen epoch, a preserved memory of a time when the climate was different. It is a library of ice, waiting to be read. The spiral troughs. If you look down at the polar cap, you see a stunning geometric pattern. The ice is cut by deep, spiraling canyons that twist outward from the center like a giant pinwheel. These are the spiral troughs. They are grand, curving valleys, carved not by rivers, but by the wind and the sun. Because Mars spins, the cold winds descending from the pole are twisted by the Coriolis effect. Over eons, these winds have scoured the ice, carving these hypnotic, swirling shapes. The troughs are dark canyons of shadow, cutting through the brilliant white ice. A pattern so large it can only be truly appreciated from orbit. It is a natural mandala, drawn by the physics of rotation and cold. Snow of dry ice. In the depths of winter, the North Pole is shrouded in darkness. The sun does not rise. The temperature drops so low, minus 125 degrees Celsius, that the atmosphere itself begins to collapse. The carbon dioxide in the air turns directly from gas to solid. It snows. But this is not the wet, fluffy snow of Earth. It is dry ice snow. Tiny dense crystals of frozen CO2 fall silently from the black sky. They accumulate on the dunes and the ice cap, coating the world in a fresh, pristine layer of frost. It is a dry, stinging cold, cleaner and sharper than anything on Earth. The silence during the snowfall is absolute. There is no melting, no slush. Just the quiet accumulation of the atmosphere turning into stone. The Northern Ocean ghost. Surrounding the polar cap is a vast, flat lowland known as Vastitas Borealis. It is one of the smoothest places in the solar system. If you stand here, the ground stretches away perfectly flat in every direction, an endless expanse of smooth plains. Scientists believe this is the ghost of an ancient ocean. Billions of years ago, when Mars was wet, this entire northern hemisphere was likely underwater. The smooth ground we see today is the old ocean floor. The sediment settled in the deep quiet of the water. Now, the water is gone, but the flatness remains. It is a seabed without a sea, a phantom shoreline waiting for a tide that will never return. The Great Dichotomy. Mars is a planet of two faces. This is known as the Martian dichotomy. The southern hemisphere is high, rugged, and heavily cratered. Ancient highlands battered by cosmic debris. The northern hemisphere is low, smooth, and young. It is as if the top half of the planet was shaved smooth. No one knows exactly why. Perhaps a massive impact early in the solar system's history sheared off the top of the crust. Or perhaps internal tectonic forces reshaped it. Whatever the cause, the result is a world that is lopsided. Walking north is always walking downhill, descending into the smooth basin of the lost ocean. Korolev Crater, the ice trap. Just south of the main polar cap lies one of the most beautiful sights on Mars, Korolev Crater. It is a large impact crater, 80 kilometers wide. But it is not empty. It is filled to the brim with pure white water ice. The crater acts as a cold trap. The air inside the bowl cools down and sinks, creating a shield of cold air that sits over the ice, protecting it from the sun. The ice never melts. It sits there, a perfect circular white lake, frozen in time. It looks like a giant skating rink, smooth and flawless, contrasting sharply against the red rock of the crater rim. It is a permanent reservoir of peace, a chalice of ice holding a mile-deep secret. The Phoenix Lander. Somewhere on these vast northern plains, a small robot sits frozen in the dust. This is the Phoenix Lander. It arrived in 2008, not to drive, but to dig. It landed, extended its robotic arm, and scratched the surface. Just inches below the red dust, it found white, gleaming ice. It touched the water of Mars. But Phoenix was not built to survive the winter. As the sun retreated and the dry ice snow began to fall, the solar panels froze over. The robot went to sleep. It sits there still, encased in frost, a silent monument to human curiosity. It is part of the landscape now, a small metal statue, resting on the infinite plain, sleeping under the blanket of the northern winter. Olympia Unde, surrounding the polar cap, is a vast sea of sand dunes called Olympia Unde. But these are not like the red dunes of the equator. These dunes are dark, rich in gypsum and basalt. They are vast ripples of dark sand stretching for hundreds of kilometers. They are caught in a dance between the ice and the wind. In the winter, they are frosted white. In the summer, they emerge dark and brooding. The wind pushes them slowly, grain by grain. They are the waves of a solid ocean, breaking silently against the shores of the polar ice. The spiders of Mars. When spring finally returns to the poles, a strange phenomenon occurs. The sunlight penetrates the translucent layer of slab ice that formed during the winter. It heats the ground underneath. The trapped carbon dioxide ice turns into gas, building up pressure until, poof, it bursts through the ice, venting upward like a geyser. It carries dark dust from below and sprays it across the white ice. From orbit, these dark, spidery patterns look like strange vegetation or cracks. They are called araniforms or spiders, but they are not alive. They are the planet breathing. It is a seasonal exhalation, a release of pressure that marks the turning of the year. Utopia. Planitia, the buried sea. Moving away from the pole, we drift over a region called Utopia Planitia. To the eye, it looks like a flat, boring plain of rocks and dust. But radar eyes see something else. Beneath this dusty surface lies a massive deposit of water ice, as large as the state of New Mexico. It is a frozen ocean, preserved underground. It has been shielded from the vacuum and the radiation by the soil. It sleeps there in the dark, a vast resource waiting for the future. It reminds us that Mars is not dry. It is just hiding its water. It is a treasure chest buried in the sand, locked away safely in the cryosphere. The polygonal ground. If you look closely at the ground in these northern latitudes, you will see patterns in the dirt. Shapes like hexagons and polygons, fitting together like a tiled floor. This is patterned ground, created by the freeze-thaw cycles of the ice underground. As the ground expands and contracts with the temperature, the soil cracks into these geometric shapes. We see similar patterns in the tundra of Antarctica and Siberia on Earth. It is a sign that the ground is active, that the ice beneath is shifting, expanding, and breathing over thousands of years. It gives the landscape a sense of order, a tiled mosaic laid down by the physics of cold. Lomonosov Crater. Here in the north lies Lomonosov Crater. It is old and worn, but its shape tells a story. The ejecta, the material thrown out when the meteorite hit, looks like a splash of mud. It doesn't look like dry dust. This suggests that when the impact happened, billions of years ago, it hit an ocean or a shallow sea. The ground rippled like water. The splash froze in place as the water evaporated, leaving a fossilized tsunami of rock. It is a violent moment frozen in stone, a permanent splash mark on the face of the planet. The thinning atmosphere. As we linger in the north, we are reminded of how fragile Mars is. The atmosphere is constantly leaking away. The solar wind strips away a few pounds of gas every second. It is a slow, invisible erosion. Over millions of years, the planet is exhaling its air into space, never to return. This is why the pressure is so low. It is a process of slow fading. Mars is gradually becoming more exposed, more naked to the void. It is a poignant reminder of planetary mortality, that worlds, like living things, change and fade over time. The cloud streets. Sometimes in the northern spring, long parallel rows of clouds form. They are called cloud streets. They line up with the wind, stretching for hundreds of miles like white highways in the sky. They cast long rhythmic shadows on the ground below. They are peaceful formations, drifting in formation. Underneath them, the shadow and light alternate, striping the plains in a slow-moving barcode of brightness and dark. Avalanches of dust. On the steep cliffs of the polar layered deposits, something moves. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has captured photos of avalanches. Blocks of ice and dust break loose from the cliff edge and tumble down the slope, kicking up billowing clouds of red dust. It is a rare moment of sudden motion in a still world. The dust hangs in the air, slowly settling in the light gravity. It is the only sound that might break the silence of the pole. A low rumble of falling ice, echoing briefly before being swallowed by the quiet. The North Star is different. If you stood on the North Pole of Mars and looked straight up, you would not see Polaris. The axis of Mars tilts at a similar angle to Earth, but it points to a different part of the sky. The Martian North Star is a spot between the constellations of Cygnus and Cepheus. Currently, there is no bright star exactly marking the pole. The sky rotates around an empty point in the dark. It is a different celestial anchor, a reminder that we are on a different ship sailing through the same starry sea. Glaciers under dust. In the mid-latitudes, south of the pole, there are strange lobed features flowing around mountains and into craters. For a long time, they were a mystery. Now we know they are glaciers. Pure water ice, hundreds of meters thick, hidden beneath a protective layer of rock and dust. They flow downhill, incredibly slowly, like viscous honey made of stone. They are debris-covered glaciers. If you were to dig through the gray rock on top, you would hit gleaming blue ice. Mars is a planet disguised as a desert, wearing a mask of dust over a face of ice. The cold is a preservative. The extreme cold of the north is not just a hazard, it is a preserver. Biology degrades in heat and moisture, but in the deep freeze of the Martian north, chemistry stops. If there were ever organic molecules or signs of ancient life, they would be perfectly preserved here. The ice is a time capsule. It holds the molecules of the past in stasis, waiting for us to find them. It is a freezer for history, keeping the secrets of the planet fresh for eternity. Drifting south. The cold of the pole is beautiful, but it is absolute. We have seen the white spiral, the frozen crater lakes, and the sleeping robot. The wind is picking up now, pushing us gently away from the axis of the world. We drift south, back toward the equator, but toward the west. Looming on the horizon, rising above the curve of the planet, are shapes that defy belief. We are leaving the ice to approach the giants, the mountains that touch space. The Tharsis rise, leaving the icy silence of the north. We drift southward, crossing the vast, empty plains. Slowly, the ground begins to rise. We are entering the Tharsis region, a massive bulge in the planet's crust, thousands of miles wide. This is the roof of Mars. The air here is thinner than anywhere else, and the horizon stretches further than the eye can believe. Looming out of the haze are shapes that defy reason. They are not jagged peaks, but immense, swelling shields of stone that touch the edge of space. We have arrived at the home of the giants. The Tharsis rise. The ground beneath us is not just high, it is heavy. The Tharsis bulge is a colossal accumulation of lava, built up over billions of years. It is so massive that its weight has actually cracked the planet's crust around it and tilted the axis of Mars. If you stood here, you would be standing on a blister of rock the size of North America. It is a monument to the planet's fiery youth. The volcanoes here are not dead, merely sleeping. They are the silent engines that once drove the climate of the entire world, now quiet and cold under the stars. The three sisters, aligned in a perfect row, stretching across the equator, stand three massive volcanoes: Ascraeus os Minhal, Pavonis Mon, and Arsia Mons. They are known as the Tharsis Montes. Each one dwarfs the largest mountains on Earth. They are shield volcanoes, shaped like warrior shields laid on the ground. Broad, gentle slopes rising gradually toward the sky. They are spaced evenly, 700 kilometers apart, like sentinels guarding the high plateau. They have stood in this formation for eras, their peaks rising so high that they pierce through the dust storms below, islands of calm in a sea of chaotic wind. Arsia Mons and the Seven Caves. On the flanks of the southernmost giant, Arsia Mons, there is a mystery. High-resolution cameras have spotted dark holes in the ground. These are the Seven Sisters. They are not craters. They are skylights, collapsed roofs opening into vast underground caverns. These are lava tubes, ancient tunnels where molten rock once flowed. Now they are empty cathedrals of stone. The openings are huge, big enough to swallow a city block. Inside, shielded from the radiation and the cold, the temperature remains constant. It is a place of absolute darkness, a stillness that has never been broken by light. These caves are the deepest, most protected places on the planet, waiting silently in the side of the volcano Pavonis Mons. The center. In the middle of the line sits Pavonis Mons, the Peacock Mountain. It sits almost directly on the Martian equator. Because of its location, it has been proposed as a site for a future space elevator. Its summit is a complex caldera, a deep circular pit where the magma chamber collapsed. Looking down into it feels like looking into the throat of the planet. The rim is silent. The lava is long gone, turned to stone. All that remains is the wind whistling over the edge of the abyss, circling the memory of fire. Escreus Mons, the highest sister. To the north lies Escreus Mons, the tallest of the three. It rises 18 kilometers into the sky. Its slopes are covered in fine dust, soft and smooth. The summit is so high that the atmospheric pressure is less than 1% of Earth's. You are practically in space here. The sky above is not butterscotch, but a deep, bruised violet, fading to black. You can see the stars clearly, even at noon. It is a place of dizzying height, where the ground falls away for hundreds of miles, merging with the curve of the planet until you cannot tell where the mountain ends and the world begins. Olympus Mons, the king. But off to the side, standing alone in the vast western plain, is the true monarch of Mars, Olympus Mons. It is the largest volcano in the solar system. It is difficult to comprehend its scale. It rises 22 kilometers high, nearly 3 times the height of Mount Everest. It is 600 kilometers wide. If you placed it on Earth, it would cover the entire country of France or the state of Arizona. It is so huge that it doesn't look like a mountain from the surface. If you stood on its slopes, the peak would be beyond the horizon. You would simply feel like you were standing on a tilted plane that goes up forever. The Great Scarp. Surrounding the base of Olympus Mons is a cliff unlike any other, the Basal Scarp. It is a sheer wall of rock, rising 6 kilometers straight up from the surrounding plains. That is a cliff nearly as tall as Mount Everest, ringing the entire volcano. It was likely formed by massive landslides, where the edges of the mountain collapsed under their own immense weight. Standing at the bottom of this cliff, looking up, you would see a wall of stone blocking out half the sky, a fortress built by gravity itself. The summit caldera. If you could drift to the very top of Olympus Mons, you would find a complex nesting of 6 circular collapse pits. This is the caldera. It is 80 kilometers wide. You could fit the city of London or New York inside it, with room to spare. It is a chaotic landscape of sunken floors and crumbling walls. This is where the lava retreated, again and again, leaving behind a hollow crown. It is the quietest place on Mars. The air is almost non-existent. The silence is absolute. There is only the cold stone and the black sky. It feels like an altar at the edge of the universe. The aureole. Surrounding the great volcano is a rugged terrain called the aureole. It looks like wrinkled skin. These are the remains of ancient landslides, vast lobes of rock that slid away from the mountain millions of years ago. They stretch for hundreds of kilometers, a chaotic jumble of ridges and valleys. It is evidence that even mountains this size are not eternal. They crumble, they slide, they settle. The aureole is the debris of majesty, resting quietly at the foot of the throne. The age of the giants. On Earth, volcanoes die quickly. But on Mars, without moving tectonic plates, the crust stayed still over the hot spots. Olympus Mons grew for billions of years. Some of the lava flows on its slopes are surprisingly young, perhaps only a few million years old. In geological terms, that is yesterday. It implies that the giant is not dead, only sleeping. Deep, deep below the crust, there might still be a pocket of warmth, a slow pulse of magma waiting for the next era to awaken. Clouds over the summit. Even though the air is thin, clouds form around the peaks of these giants. In the afternoon, water ice clouds gather around the summit of Arsia Mons and Olympus Mons. They are orographic clouds, formed when the air is pushed up the slope and cools. From orbit, they look like white halos crowning the volcanoes. Standing on the summit, you would look down on these clouds. You would be an island in a sea of white mist, completely detached from the surface of the planet below. The view of the horizon. From the top of Olympus Mons, the horizon is far away. But because the volcano is so wide, you cannot see the base. The mountain is so large that its slope extends beyond the horizon. It creates a strange illusion. You feel as though you are standing on a separate planet, a small world of rock floating high above the main sphere of Mars. The curvature of the planet is visible, a distinct arc separating the red ground from the black void. It is a view of godlike perspective, lonely and terrifyingly vast. Lava channels. Running down the sides of these mountains are long, sinuous channels called relais. These were once rivers of lava, flowing fast and hot. Now they are empty trenches, winding their way down to the plains. Some have roofs that have caved in. Others are open canyons. They are the veins of the volcano, drained of their blood. They guide the eye downward, tracing the path of the heat that once flowed here, leaving cool stone in its wake. The Tharsis bulge affects the spin. The weight of these volcanoes is so immense that scientists believe they actually shifted the entire crust of Mars. Long ago, the weight of Tharsis caused the outer shell of the planet to rotate relative to the core, moving the poles to their current position. These mountains are not just features on the landscape. They are anchors that rebalanced the world. They dictated the destiny of the planet through sheer mass. Meteorites avoid the peaks. The summits of these volcanoes have very few impact craters. This tells us they are young. The lava flows covered up older craters. It means the surface we see is fresh, geologically speaking, while the southern highlands are battered and scarred. The faces of the giants are smooth. They have wiped their history clean with fire, presenting a fresh, unblemished surface to the cold sky. The infinite slope. Walking up Olympus Mons would be an endless journey. The slope is gentle, only a few degrees. It wouldn't feel like climbing a mountain. It would feel like walking on a slightly tilted ramp that never ends. You would walk for days, then weeks, and the scenery would barely change. Just the red rock, the dust, and the sky turning darker with every mile. It is a journey of patience, a slow ascent into the vacuum. Noctis labyrinthus, the fracture. At the eastern edge of the Tharsis rays, the ground begins to shatter. The immense weight of the volcanoes pulled the crust apart. This created the Noctis labyrinthus, the labyrinth of the night. It is a chaotic web of intersecting valleys, steep-walled canyons, and isolated mesas. It looks like a shattered mirror. Fog often settles in the deep floors of the maze. It is a confusing, disorienting place, a gateway between the high volcanic plateau and the deep scar that lies beyond. The prelude to the tear. The labyrinth serves as the source. The cracks here widen. They deepen. They merge. They stop being valleys and start being abysses. We are drifting east now, leaving the high, thin air of the volcanoes. We are descending toward the equator, where the planet has been torn open. We are approaching the grandest canyon in the solar system, the scar that defines the face of Mars. We leave the dizzying heights of the Tharsis volcanoes and drift eastward. The ground below begins to change. The smooth plains fracture. Small cracks appear in the red crust, growing wider, deeper, and darker with every mile. These are not rivers carved by water. They are tectonic wounds. We are approaching the edge of something monumental. Valles Marineris, the Grand Canyon of Mars. but to call it a canyon is to underestimate it. It is a tear across the face of the planet, a vast abyss that stretches for 4,000 kilometers. If placed on Earth, it would reach from New York to Los Angeles. We are about to descend into the deep timeline of the world, the scale of the abyss. Standing on the rim of Valles Marineris is an experience of vertigo unlike any other. The drop is terrifyingly sheer. In some places, the canyon floor lies 7 kilometers below your feet. That is 4 times deeper than the Grand Canyon on Earth. If you dropped a stone from the edge, it would take nearly 2 minutes to hit the bottom. The far wall is so distant, sometimes 200 kilometers away, that it is obscured by the curve of the planet and the atmospheric haze. You are looking into a hole so big that it has its own weather, its own lighting, and its own atmosphere. The tectonic tear. This canyon was not carved by a river. Slowly and patiently over time, it was ripped open. Billions of years ago, as the Tharsis volcanoes grew heavy, the crust of Mars buckled and stretched. The tension became too great, and the planet cracked. The ground simply dropped away, opening this colossal wound. It is a fossilized earthquake of planetary proportions. Walking along the rim, you are witnessing the moment the planet's skin failed, frozen in stone for eternity. Descending into shadow, let us drift down over the edge, sinking slowly into the chasm. As we descend, the sky narrows above us. The bright butterscotch dome is replaced by the towering walls of red rock. The light changes. Down here, the shadows are long and deep. Because the walls are so high, the sun rises late and sets early. The canyon floor lives in twilight for much of the day. It is a place of permanent dusk, protected from the harsh glare of the surface. It feels like entering a secret room, hidden deep within the chest of the world. The layered walls. As we float past the cliff face, look at the rock. It is striped, band upon band of red, brown, and tan rock. These are the pages of Martian history. Each layer was laid down over millions of years. Ancient lava flows, sedimentary dust deposits, ash from volcanic eruptions. We are descending through time. The top layers are young. The bottom layers are from the very birth of the planet. It is a vertical library of geology, exposed to the vacuum, telling a story of fire and dust that no one has ever read. Morning fog. In the early hours of the morning, something magical happens in the deeps. The air at the bottom of the canyon is denser than on the surface. As the night cools the rock, water ice condenses. A thin, white fog forms on the canyon floor. it clings to the lowest points, drifting through the labyrinth of mesas and dunes. From the rim, it looks like a river of white silk flowing through the red rock. It is a ghost river, a fleeting memory of the water that might have once flooded these depths. As the sun rises, the fog evaporates, vanishing into the thin air like a dream. The landslides at the base of the cliffs, we see immense mounds of rubble. These are gigantic landslides. Some of them are the size of entire mountain ranges. Millions of years ago, parts of the canyon wall collapsed, tumbling down in a catastrophic event. The debris flowed across the Gakishan canyon floor like a liquid, spreading out for dozens of miles before freezing in place. In the low gravity and thin air, these landslides traveled further than they would on Earth. Now, they are still. Huge boulders, the size of houses, sit quietly in the dust, resting exactly where they stopped eons ago. Eos Antithonium. The western end of the canyon is split into two main branches, Eos Chasma and Tithonium Chasma. They are deep, narrow, and rugged. Here, the walls are carved by gullies, small channels that look like they were cut by flowing water. Some scientists believe melting snow or groundwater eeped out of the cliffs here, trickling down into the dark. It is a landscape of erosion, intricate and fractal, looking like the veins of a leaf stamped into the rock. Melas Chasma, the deepest point. In the central section lies Melas Chasma. This is the widest and deepest part of the system. The floor here is 11 kilometers below the surrounding plains. The atmospheric pressure at the bottom is significantly higher than on the surface. If you were standing here, your spacesuit would register the difference. It is the thickest air on Mars. If liquid water were poured out here, it might last for a few moments before boiling away, cradled by the pressure of the depth. It is a dark, heavy basin, the sinkhole of the planet. Kandor Chasma and the layered mounds. Inside the canyon, rising from the floor, are strange mountains. In Kandor Chasma, there are mounds of layered material that reach almost to the top of the canyon rim. These are not parts of the original floor. They were built up later. Perhaps they are sediments from an ancient lake that once filled the canyon. Perhaps they are piles of dust trapped by the wind. They stand like islands in the abyss, striped and beautiful, eroded by the wind into smooth, aerodynamic shapes. The wind sounds different. Down here, the wind has a different voice. On the open plains, it hisses. In the canyon, it funnels through the narrow gaps and echoes off the walls. It creates a low, resonant vibration, a deep bass note. It is the sound of the planet breathing through a flute of stone. The walls shelter the floor from the fiercest storms, creating a pocket of relative calm. But the air is never truly still. It flows like a river, invisible and cold, shaping the dunes on the canyon floor. The dark dunes of Koprates. Further east, in Kopratsk Chasma, the floor is covered in fields of black sand dunes. These are not red like the surface. They are made of volcanic basalt, eroded from the ancient lava layers in the walls. They form classic Barchan shapes, crescents of sand marching slowly across the rock against the red walls. These black dunes look striking, almost alien. They are ripples of shadow on the canyon floor, moving inch by inch over centuries, recycling the dust. The canyon acts as a trap. Dust from the global storms falls into the chasm and gets stuck. The air currents swirl it around, but much of it stays deep in the shadowed pockets. Over billions of years, the canyon has been swallowing the surface, burying its own floor in a blanket of soft, fine powder. It is a soft place to land, a deep pillow of dust cushioning the jagged rocks below. The silence of the shade. Because the sun is blocked for so much of the day, the temperature in the canyon fluctuates wildly. But in the shade of the great southern wall, there are places that haven't seen direct sunlight for millions of years. Deep overhangs and caves at the base of the cliff. In these eternal shadows, the cold is absolute. It is a preservation chamber. If there is ice here, it has been frozen since the dinosaurs walked the earth. It is a stillness within a stillness. The gateway to the outflow. As we travel east, the canyon begins to change. It stops being a tectonic crack and starts to look chaotic. The walls break down into jumbled blocks. This is the chaos terrain. It marks the transition to the outflow channels. Billions of years ago, immense underground aquifers burst, and water flooded out of the canyon, rushing toward the northern plains. This end of Valles Marineris was a spillway. The violence of that flood is gone, but the scars remain. Scoured rock, teardrop-shaped islands, and channels carved by a torrent of biblical proportions. Standing on the floor. Imagine standing on the floor of Melas Kasma at noon. To your left and right, cliffs rise up and disappear into the haze, taller than the Himalayas. You feel small, smaller than you have ever felt. You are a speck in a geological wound. But the feeling is not one of fear. It is of awe. You are held in the embrace of the planet. The walls protect you. The sky is a distant ribbon of blue-black. You are deep inside the Martian experience, grounded in the most profound way possible. a cathedral of time. Valles Marineris is not just a canyon. It is a cathedral. It is a space defined by emptiness. It is a hollow monument to the power of the planet's interior. It reminds us that Mars was once dynamic, violent, and moving. Now that energy is frozen in the architecture of the cliffs. The drama has ended, and the theater has been left empty and silent. Drifting out, we slowly ascend, rising past the layered stripes, past the morning fog, past the crumbling rim. We emerge back onto the flat, sunlit plains. The great scar falls away behind us, a dark line drawn in the red sand. We are drifting further east now, toward the lands where the water went, toward the craters that hold stories of lakes and the quiet search for life. We leave the Great Canyon behind, drifting further east across the rugged highlands. The landscape here changes again. It is pockmarked with craters, battered by eons of cosmic impacts. But if you look closely at the ground, you see softer shapes amidst the sharp rocks. Winding channels, dried up basins. We are entering the regions where Mars holds its deepest memory, the memory of water. Billions of years ago, this dust was mud. These empty craters were lakes, reflecting a younger sun. We are here to walk the phantom shorelines of a dried-up world. Jezero Crater, the Lost Lake. Our journey takes us to a specific depression in the ground. Jezero Crater. Today it is a dry, dusty bowl, 45 kilometers wide. But close your eyes and imagine it as it was. A river once breached the crater wall, rushing in to fill the basin. It created a lake the size of Lake Tahoe. The water was likely calm, protected by the crater rim. For millions of years, sediments drifted slowly to the bottom, building up layers of mud and clay. Standing here now, you are standing on the floor of that ghost lake. The water is gone, but the shape of the basin still cradles the empty air, remembering the weight it once held. The silent delta. At the western edge of Jezero, we see a fan-shaped landform spreading out from the crater wall. It is a river delta. On Earth, deltas are places of life, teeming with birds and reeds. Here, the delta is stone. It is a fossilized fan of sediment, preserved perfectly in the vacuum. You can trace the path where the water slowed down and dropped its cargo of sand. It is a sculpture of flow frozen in time. It sits in absolute stillness, a monument to a river that stopped running 3 billion years ago. The mud cracks. Down on the ground, the Curiosity rover found something familiar. Hexagonal patterns in the rock. These are ancient mud cracks, just like a dried puddle on a sidewalk on Earth cracks as it dries. The mud of Mars, cracked billions of years ago. Mineral-rich water seeped into those cracks and hardened, preserving them forever. These geometric shapes are a direct connection to a wet past. They tell us of a time when Mars had cycles, wet and dry seasons, rhythmic and predictable. The rhythm has stopped, but the pattern remains in the stone. Gale Crater and Mount Chut Sharp. Further south lies Gale Crater. In its center rises a mountain unlike any other, Mount Sharp. It is not a volcano. It is a mountain made of layers. Over eons, wind and water deposited sediment in the crater, building a stack of rock 5 kilometers high. It is a timeline of the planet's climate. The bottom layers tell of fresh water and lakes. The middle layers speak of drying sulfates and acidic ground. The top layers are dry dust. Climbing this mountain is climbing through the history of the planet's death. It is a lonely ascent through the eras of drying out. The robot geologists. Moving slowly across these landscapes are the emissaries from Earth. Curiosity, perseverance. They are the only things moving on the entire planet. They are the size of small cars, running on nuclear batteries, humming softly in the thin air. They do not hurry. They move inches at a time, pausing to zap a rock with a laser or drill a small hole. They are solitary monks, dedicated to the study of silence. They work day and night, sending their findings across the void. They are not abandoned. They are the steadfast guardians of our curiosity, patrolling the empty deserts on our behalf. The preserved shorelines. In the northern plains, scientists trace long, faint ridges that stretch for thousands of kilometers. These are believed to be the ancient shorelines of the Borealis Ocean. If you stood here 3 billion years ago, waves would have lapped at your feet. You would have heard the sound of surf. Now, it is just a subtle rise in the dust. But the line is still there. The boundary between the land and the lost sea. It is a ghostly demarcation, separating the highlands from the abyss where the water used to be. The clay-bearing unit. There is a specific type of rock that excites scientists, phyllosilicates, or clays. Clay only forms in water, neutral, gentle, long-standing water. Mars is covered in these clays. They are painted across the surface in shades of gray and blue-green, distinct from the red rust. They are the chemical proof that Mars was once habitable, not just wet, but gentle, a place where life could have started. These clay beds are soft, sleeping blankets of minerals, holding the chemical potential of a life that may or may not have existed. The water underground. The water did not all escape to space. Much of it went down. It retreated into the crust. Radar scans suggest that deep aquifers may still exist, kilometers beneath the surface. Liquid water, kept warm by the planet's core and kept liquid by heavy salts. It is the hidden biosphere. If life exists on Mars today, it is not on the surface. It is deep down, in the dark, swimming in the veins of the planet. Mars might look dead on the outside, but it could be holding a secret ocean in its heart. The recurring slope, lineae. On some steep crater walls, during the warmest days of summer, dark streaks appear. They grow slowly downhill, lengthening like tears running down a cheek. These are recurring slope lineae. Some believe they are flows of briny water, melting briefly and trickling down before evaporating. Others say it is dry sand sliding, but they are a sign of activity. The planet still shifts. It still changes. It is not a static painting, but a slow-motion film, ticking forward frame by frame. The sound of the laser. When the rover Perseverance uses its laser to zap a rock, it makes a sound. Snap, snap, snap. The rover's microphone recorded it. It is a sharp, staccato noise cutting through the silence. It is the sound of human inquiry striking the ancient stone. But as soon as the laser stops, the silence rushes back in, swallowing the noise instantly. The stillness of Mars is resilient. It absorbs our presence without breaking. Earth, the morning star. And now, as our journey comes to an end, let us stand on the rim of Jezero crater and look up. It is just before dawn. The sky is brightening to a pale violet. Above the eastern horizon, a single bright star rises. It is brilliant, shining with a steady blue light. That star is Earth. From here, you cannot see the borders. You cannot hear the arguments. You cannot see the cities or the traffic. You see only a single fragile point of light. It looks peaceful from this distance. It looks small. Everything you love, everyone you know, is on that tiny spark suspended in the dark. The distance is a blanket. Seeing Earth from Mars gives you a new perspective. The distance acts as a buffer. The worries that felt so heavy on Earth cannot reach you here. They are too far away. Here, on the red dunes, there is only the geology, the wind, and the stars. You are safe in the vastness. The emptiness is not cold. It is spacious. It gives you room to breathe, room to be quiet, room to simply exist. The dust settles. The wind is dying down now. The dust devils have dissolved. The sun is dipping below the horizon, bringing the cool blue twilight back to the sky. The rovers are entering their sleep mode, recharging their batteries for another day of slow exploration. The rocks are settling into the cold. The planet is returning to its natural state of rest. You are part of the cosmos. As you lay there drifting in the dark, remember that you are made of the same stuff as this planet. The iron in your blood is the same iron that makes the Martian soil red. The water in your body is the same water that once carved these canyons. You are not a stranger to this universe. You are a child of it. You fit here. You belong to the stars as much as the mountains do. The final drift. We leave the red world now. We let it spin on in the silence, guarding its secrets, holding its history in the ice and stone. We drift back through the velvet quiet of space, back to your own time, your own room. The gravity returns, but it is gentle now, a warm blanket pulling you down into sleep. If you are still with me, if you are still drifting through the red twilight, then let us go deeper. We have walked the mountains and the canyons, but Mars has places that defy explanation. Landscapes so strange, they look like they belong to a dream. We are moving now to the rugged southern hemisphere and the chaotic terrains that lie hidden between the plains. Here, the planet wears its oldest scars and its most bizarre masks. Let the gravity pull you down further. We are exploring the hidden mysteries of the dark, the Swiss cheese terrain. At the South Pole, the landscape looks alien even for Mars. The carbon dioxide ice does not form smooth sheets like in the north. Instead, it sublimates, turns to gas in strange circular pits. Over centuries, these pits grow and merge, leaving behind odd, elevated mesas and flat-topped hills. Scientists call this the Swiss cheese terrain. It looks like a giant frozen sponge made of dry ice. It is a landscape of negative space, where the holes are more important than the ground. The sun casts long, confusing shadows across these pits, creating a dizzying, geometric silence at the bottom of the world. Hellas Planitia, the cauldron. In the south lies a massive bruise on the face of the planet, the Hellas Basin. It is one of the largest impact craters in the solar system, created when a small planetoid crashed into Mars billions of years ago. It is so deep, 7 kilometers deep, that the atmosphere here is twice as thick as on the surface. It is a cauldron. Fog and mist often gather at the bottom, trapped by the high walls. Dust storms often start here, swirling in the deep bowl before spilling out over the rest of the planet. Standing at the bottom of Hellas, you are standing in the deepest, heaviest air on Mars, looking up at walls that seem to touch the stars. The chaos terrain. East of the Great Canyon lies a region known as Chaos, Arum Chaos, Aureum Chaos. The names fit the landscape. Here the ground has collapsed into a jumbled mess of massive blocks, flat-topped mesas, and deep clefts. It looks like a puzzle that has been shaken apart. This happened when ancient underground ice melted rapidly, causing the ground above to crumble and sink. It is a ruined landscape, a shattered floor where blocks of stone the size of cities lie tilted at odd angles. It is a place of absolute disorder, frozen in the moment of collapse. The Ghost Dunes. In the Noctis, Labyrinthus, and Hellas Basin, we find ghost dunes. These were once active sand dunes that were buried by lava or water, hardened into rock, and then re-exposed by wind erosion billions of years later. The sand is gone, but the shape remains. They are hollow molds of dunes, preserved in the bedrock. They are pit-like structures that curve exactly like the wind once blew. They are negative footprints of a climate that died eons ago, shadows of sand cast in stone. The face of Cydonia. Drifting north, we pass over the Cydonia region. Decades ago, fuzzy photos showed a hill here that looked like a human face staring up at the sky. We know now, with better cameras, that it is just an eroded mesa, a trick of light and shadow. But the feeling remains. It is a reminder of how our minds seek familiarity in the alien. Even though it is just rock, watching it drift by in the silence, it feels like a silent guardian. An eroded sphinx worn down by 1 billion years of wind, staring eternally into the void. Medusae fossae, the soft rock. Near the equator lies a mysterious deposit called the Medusae fossae Formation. It is vast, covering an area the size of India. The rock here is soft, easily carved by the wind. It has been sculpted into long, sharp ridges called yardungs. They look like the hulls of overturned ships or the fins of giant sharks swimming through the sand. The wind howls through these ridges, acting like a flute. If you stood there, you might hear the planet singing a low, mournful note as the air rushes through the carved stone corridors. The green sand of Nili Fossae. Mars is not entirely red. In a region called Nili Fossae, the sand is green. It is rich in the mineral olivine, a green crystal found in volcanic rocks. On Earth, olivine weathers away quickly in rain. On Mars, because it is so dry, the green crystals survive. They form drifts and dunes of olive-colored sand. It is a splash of cold color in the warm rust. A jewel-toned desert that sparkles faintly under the weak sun, offering a rare contrast to the endless ochre. The Marsquakes. We used to think Mars was dead, a solid rock. But the InSight lander put its ear to the ground and heard something. Marsquakes. The planet trembles. These are not violent earthquakes like on Earth, but subtle shudders as the planet cools and contracts. It is the creaking of a house settling in the night. Deep underground, rocks fracture and shift. The planet is still adjusting, still moving, still reacting to the cooling of its own heart. The silence is broken only by these deep, muffled groans from the core. The avalanches of the north. We return briefly to the North Pole. High resolution cameras have caught something moving. On the steep cliffs of ice, avalanches happen. Blocks of ice and dust break loose and tumble down the slope, kicking up billowing clouds of red and white powder. In the low gravity, the dust hangs in the air for a long time, drifting slowly. Like smoke, it is a rare moment of sudden violence in a still world. A reminder that gravity never sleeps, even here. The recurring frost. Every morning in the higher latitudes, the ground turns white. A temporary frost of water and carbon dioxide coats the rocks. As the sun rises and touches the ground, the frost sublimates, turning into invisible gas. For a few hours each morning, Mars wears a delicate lace of white. It is a fleeting beauty. By noon, the red returns. It is a daily cycle of dressing and undressing, a rhythmic breathing of the surface that happens whether we are watching or not. The sky at zenith. If you lay on your back and looked straight up at noon, the sky would not be butterscotch. Dust stays near the horizon. Straight up, through the thinnest part of the atmosphere, the sky is a dark, brownish black. You can see the brightest stars even during the day. It is a reminder of how thin the veil is. There is no blue safety blanket here. You are standing on a rock in space, exposed to the infinite. The darkness is always right there, just above your head. The solar wind aurora. Mars lacks a global magnetic field, but it has proton auroras. On the day side of the planet, the solar wind slams into the hydrogen cloud that surrounds Mars. It causes a glow in ultraviolet light. We cannot see it with our eyes, but the whole planet shimmers with invisible energy. It is a silent light show, dancing in a spectrum we cannot perceive, bathing the world in a ghostly radiance. The mystery of methane. Sensors have detected plumes of methane gas appearing and disappearing in the atmosphere. On Earth, methane comes from life or volcanoes. On Mars, we don't know the source. It might be ancient gas trapped in ice, finally leaking out. Or it might be something else, deep underground, metabolic, and quiet. The plumes vanish quickly, destroyed by sunlight. They are chemical whispers, hints of a secret the planet is not quite ready to tell. The loneliness of the rover tracks. If you were to follow the path of the Curiosity rover, you would see two parallel lines of wheel tracks stretching back for miles. In the thin air, without rain to wash them away, these tracks will last for millions of years. They are the first roads on Mars. They look impossibly lonely. A single set of tracks winding through the chaotic rocks, climbing mountains, crossing dunes. They are a signature of persistence, a drawing made by humanity on the canvas of another world. The future rings. Look up at Phobos again. It is getting closer. In 30 to 50 million years, gravity will rip it apart. Mars will not always be a planet of moons. One day, it will be a planet of rings. A beautiful dusty ring system will encircle the equator, shining in the sunlight. The night sky will change forever. We are seeing Mars in a brief, moonlit chapter of its life. We are witnessing a moment that will pass, giving way to a new, ringed elegance in the deep future. The deepest sleep. We have seen the weird, the deep, and the hidden. The cheese terrain, the ghost dunes, the green sands. Mars is not just a dead rock. It is a world of texture, of history, of quiet complexity. It has shown us its scars and its secrets. Now, the final curtain of dust is falling. The mysteries are safe. They will be here tomorrow, and for 1 billion years after that. Final rest. You have traveled far tonight. You have walked the surface of a world 140 million miles away. The distance is a comfort. The silence is a blanket. Let the red world fade into the black of your closed eyes. The universe is vast, and you are a small, warm part of it, resting in the safety of gravity. Let go of the signal. Let go of the light. Drift. Drift into the shadow of the dunes. Drift into the quiet of the ice. Drift into the deep, dreamless sleep of the cosmos. Good night. The journey is over. The stars are watching. The universe is slow and deep and kind. You can rest now. Let the silence of Mars follow you into your dreams. Sleep well. Good night.